Okay guys, we're back again. This is Mel Capone. In the last video, we talked about setting your head deck clearance. The video before that, we talked about tuning the engine. And the video before that, we talked about setting a syntax clutch. And most of my conversation, if not all of my conversations, will be related to RC drag racing on prep tracks. Prep tracks meaning VHT has been sprayed on the track for the most traction possible. And we use Coford on our tires on top of the VHT. Okay, so today I'd like to talk about taking the engine apart. Many of you guys probably already know how to do this, but there may be somebody out there that's new, getting into RCs and Nitro, and maybe they don't understand. So appreciate your likes. If you would hit like, appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, to subscribe. Okay, first thing you want to do, well, at this point, we've already taken the head off the engine. You can go back to my head deck video to see how to do that. And so that'll explain to you how to take the head off, and which is pretty simple. It's pretty simple. First thing you want to do is make sure you have your flywheel mounted onto your crank. Have it mounted and tight. So now we want to take off the back plate. But before you take that back plate off, it is very crucial that piston is at top dead center, locked in. You don't want it to roll down while you're taking that back plate off. There's a risk, and I've done this before when I first started, of breaking the piston when that back plate is removed. So you want to make sure that you take precautions not to do that. All right, so I'll turn a little light on, bring some little bit more clarity to the video. All right, so you want a screwdriver that's going to fit into these flathead screws really well without slipping and stripping them out. Last thing you want to do is strip out this little screw right here. So you want to make sure your screwdriver fits into that really good without slopping, without wanting to spin out. So with my piston locked at top dead center, I want to do my cross pattern. I break that loose, come across, get my screwdriver in there well. So you can see this screw has a burr on it where I have at some point messed it up. So at that point, I'm going to get a screwdriver that has a more narrow blade and get in there. So you want to be real careful that you don't mess your screws up and have to battle getting the screws out. So the rest of them look good. Not a problem turning them out. So turn those screws out. I'm not even going to stop the video on this one because this is a pretty fast, this should be a pretty fast video. I won't need to save footage on this one. There's probably somebody out there saying, "Oh, we'll see the inside of this engine finally." But like I tell these guys all the time, my engines are stock. I have some modified engines from the past, but everything I run nowadays, I run stock. If I buy a high-end motor, if I buy a Nova Rossi engine that's already got the R&D and everything already put into this engine, I don't modify it. I break the engine in, I shade the fins down, and I go racing. And another thing, you'll see when I crack this engine open, this engine hadn't been ran in over a year. It's been sitting. So you'll see that the condition of this engine, because I use corrosion X, and I bought a can a long time ago. This is what it looks like. And that stuff, it lasts forever. You can buy a big can like this and it'll last you almost your lifetime. All right, piston on top. And what I do is I take and twist this just a little bit, just to break that seal. Just to kind of give it a little twist to help break that seal if possible. There we go, it's moving. You want to be careful because there's a O-ring in here on this back plate. You want to be careful that you don't damage that O-ring. All right, so once you break that bond, that thing comes right out of there. Look at the inside of this engine. Look at that. It's pristine. There's no rust. You don't see any corrosion, anything built up, any cake looking surface. Surface. Everything is nice and clean. Look at that. That's because of the corrosion X, and because before I get through racing each day, I crank my engine up. I pull the fuel tubing while the engine's running, and I let it idle and run all the fuel out of the engine, and then I spray my corrosion X in it. So I take the glow plug out, spray some corrosion X in, roll the flywheel over, and then just kind of get it circulated around in there by hand, and then I take a napkin, put it over my glow plug, and set it on my starter box and blow the excess out. So I don't just leave an excess amount of corrosion X in here. It's not necessary. So I blow that back out the plug. You know, a lot of times I'll plug up my exhaust pipe so that all the pressure returns out of the glow plug hole. And that's how I leave my engine for years, and I get this kind of condition on the engine. All right, enough of that. Set the head aside, and let's go back. Look at this. Look at this. That's not a head. It's a back plate. Look at this groove in the back plate. That is where your piston rides. Your piston comes down and goes into those grooves of this back plate, the back of the piston. So if you was to pull this off with that piston in the down position, let's show you. Roll the piston down. You would chip the bottom of that piston right there. You would actually break that off. And I've done that before, and I've tried to run those engines by shaving that piston clean and stuff. And there again, I feel like I was in a situation where I had modified the engine beyond its ability to perform well. Someone may say, "Oh, that's a great thing to lighten the piston," but I don't know. I'm not going to say one way or the other, but I had issues with it. Another thing, while you're in here, you can look at your rod play. I'm going to try to show you this as best as possible. So when you roll that piston in the top dead center, that's your rod play. That's how much play you got in your rod. I'm going to try to hold it still as possible. I haven't ran this engine much, but that engine is good to go. That little play right there, no issues with my level of criteria. I mean, I'll accept that. That's nothing to me. Okay, so roll the piston to the top to the bottom. Now, the question is how you get this sleeve out of here. The next step is to get the sleeve out. That's the only thing that comes next. You can't get the piston out, can't get the connecting rod out until this sleeve comes out. So the question is, what do I do? Do I take a screwdriver and stick it here and screw all this up? Of course not, if all possible. So the first thing I do is I stick a zip tie into the exhaust port with the piston that rolled down. Stick the zip tie into the exhaust port. You see it came out the top. Now I take my flywheel and roll the engine over. And hopefully that's enough for it to come out. There you go. I'm sorry if I didn't in the camera. You can see that rolls it right out of there. Don't go up so high that you pinch the zip tie in the exhaust port. You don't want to do that. So you bring the piston back down. Pull the zip tie out. Now you pull the sleeve out by hand. There it is. Look how pristine everything is on this sleeve. This engine's been ran. Look how clean it is. The corrosion X is your friend. Maybe corrosion X will contact me after this video. But corrosion X is your friend. Look how clean this entire sleeve is. Notice, fellas, it's not modified. This is how it comes from the factory. There's a little bit of something right there, but you know, it has nothing to do with corrosion X. Something got in the engine, possibly, or when I was running. Okay, set that sleeve to the side. There's your engine, no sleeve. Take now and roll that piston at the top. Put one finger at the top of the piston. Put your thumb on the sleeve, on the rod, and try to pull backwards. Well, Yeah. I'm going to try to pull back on that rod with your finger. Just grab it, pull it off of the, roll your crank down. There it is. See, I was able to pull that back by pinching in this manner and pulling that off. Now, the piston comes right out. There's your piston. Unmodified anywhere. This is, it's got corrosion X on it. Nice protected on it. So I'm just going to set that piston over here in my sleeve. Now, let's clean my hands off here. Now the next step is the easiest step. Take your alternate flywheel tool, or whichever tool you choose, and take that flywheel off. Alright, so that flywheel is wedged onto this tapered collar. So what I like to do is just take a screwdriver, put it in there, and carefully just twist a little bit, or pry up or down. No, be careful not to hit your bearing. You don't want to hit your bearing, so I'm just going to twist it. There you go. It's that simple. Make sure you have everything out of the way, so when that happens, you don't pop anything, hit it, and damage anything. Take the collar off. Sometimes it comes off. A lot of times you can take your screwdriver and stick it in the groove of the collar and slightly push up, and it'll come right off. Now, everything's out. Sleeve out, pistons out, everything's out. Now you should be able to just push on your crank from the other side. Just take and push it. There's your crank. Here's my crank. Unmodified. From the factory. Now, I'm not bashing any modifiers. Listen closely, guys. I'm not bashing any modifiers. I'm emphasizing unmodified because there's a lot of guys out there that race with me that don't believe that I run stock engines. And this is no proof, but this is proof that this engine's not modified. And everybody knows that I only have one Virtus. They've seen me run this Virtus before at the track. So, modified versus unmodified is your personal preference. Some people believe in modified, some people don't. It's all your personal preference. I'm not bashing anyone or anybody's process, but for me, myself, if I buy a high-end engine, I'm running the stock. I may learn a year from now that, hey, I need to buy a high-end engine and have it modified, and I'll pick up. But for now, this is what I do. All right. I can see just a little bit of surface rust right there, and that may be because of where the engine sits, or I didn't get it coated well, but that's nothing though, fellas. That is nothing right there. I can probably wipe that off with a paper towel just about. It's basically nothing. I don't know if y'all can see what I was pointing at. It might not be in the camera, but that little surface right there, it's nothing. And I guarantee you, if I'd have put this engine up without corrosion X, everything would have been rusted. That fuel will eat at your engine. And another thing, Byron fuel. That Byron fuel, which you can't get anymore, is so superior, so great that I think it's got some ingredients in it that just help protect the engine more. I stopped blowing glow plugs when I started running Byron fuel. So that's it. All right, so we can slap this back together real quick. So what we can do, I'm just going to quickly go through this, push your crank in, and then, so in the next video, well, I ain't going to talk about that, but now you can just push your crank in, make sure it's seated all the way. I would advise you cleaning these parts. If you're taking them apart and you're doing a bunch of work or whatever, I would advise you cleaning it. So put your crank back in, make sure it's seated all the way in, and same thing in reverse. Put your piston in, the skirt of the piston goes in the back. Pinch that piston and rod assembly, roll that crank over, and slip it back onto the crank pin. There it is. All right, roll it down. Grab your sleeve. And while I'm in here, I'm just going to take the time to clean right around this edge here. Probably should have did that before I put the crank in. Just going to clean that up. Just a little bit of blackness there, brownness that I don't like. I'm just going to take and clean that up a little bit. No biggie. Okay, roll the piston down. Exhaust port in the back. And carefully insert this. Just kind of wiggle it a little bit. Don't just jam it down, because if you jam it down, if you just take this and shove it down, you're gonna bind your piston, potentially hurt your your piston. So what I like to do is look from the top. Trying to make sure that y'all can see this. I'm gonna slowly push it down. And when I get close to that piston, I'm gonna start wiggling my crank back and forth until I get that, and just re-angle the engine until I get that piston lined up with that sleeve. And then I'm gonna pull. Once I see it's lined up, it's in there, see the piston's in there, I'm gonna roll it down and slowly pull my sleeve down. And that sleeve there's a groove in this sleeve, and there's a pin in your case. It's got to line up. So you want to make sure before you get down there that you are in line. Because once you get down in there, it's going to be hard to rotate that bad boy. So I'm trying my best to eyeball that sucker. Piston's in. Roll the piston down. Make sure I'm not binding anything. Get a little closer. I see I need to rotate a little bit. See if I can do that. It's really hard to do. The further you go down, the harder it is. So my piston's in. I'm going to try to rotate as I push down. And I did. I was successful. I rotated with my thumbs as I pushed down, just a rabbit's butthole hair, to be able to get that lined up. And now my sleeve is inserted all the way in. Look in the exhaust port. Everything looks like it should be where it should be. And I'm all the way pressed down. Now if you wanted to, you could take your screwdriver, plastic screwdriver handle, and kind of tap around that. Alright. Now, same thing. Can't put this back plate in with that piston at the bottom. You'll break it. Roll your piston. So let's do this first. Let's put this flywheel back on. Where's my collar? Take and put your finger at the crank, hold the crank from moving, and slip this collar on. Slip the flywheel on, flywheel nut. And I'm not even going to tighten this with the offner tool. I'm just going to hold it by hand for now, because that's all I need. That's all I need. I don't need much for this process, what I'm doing. And I see I got something off my hand inside there. There's cleanliness. You want to make sure you're clean. I got a little piece of paper. Make sure I get that out of there. Now I'm just going to roll this piston to the top dead center. There it is. At my top dead center. One thing you could have did was measure that crank pin in relationship to your bushing in your rod to see what that relationship is, and keep document that. And the next time you turn the engine down, you measure that and see how much it wore, and then you can kind of gauge and track yourself for the future on how much rod wear it takes, or how much rod wear before you need to replace your rod. So that's one thing you could have did. So that's that top dead center we was talking about in the other video, that pop, that groove. All right, pistons that locked at top dead center. Slip the back plate in. You want to make sure all the surfaces are clean. No debris, no dirt. I'll take my piece of paper here and just kind of give a wipe on this, just to make sure. There we go. Pistons at top dead center. Pop in your screws. Do not roll that piston down until you're through tightening this back plate. So it's all about being clean and careful when taking the engine apart. And somebody out there may say, I knew this already. This is nothing. You didn't tell me nothing. Well, this video wasn't for you because you already knew what I was doing. This is for someone who may be faced with the challenge of doing this for the first time, and they don't want to pay someone. They want to learn for themselves. Still appreciate your support by hitting like. I don't use Loctite on these, and if I did use Loctite, it would be the blue. I would never use red or green on the screws. It's more of a permanent solution. The blue is your medium strength, temporary, but I don't use Loctite on them. I just make sure I tighten them well in a star pattern. And they will not come out if you got them tight enough. Should never worry about that back plate coming off. That's it, fellas. Roll your piston down. Make sure everything's smooth. There it is. Look like I got a little paper debris there. There it is. That's how you tear your engine apart. Alright guys, good luck. And like I said, like and subscribe. If you're not already subscribed, at least hit the like for me. Good luck racing.